Hello and welcome to another bad review. Today we are looking at X-Men and Alpha Flight issue 2 of 2. Now this had a $1.50 cover price, which was very expensive back in 1985, and it was on slightly nicer paper with a better inking process, that sort of thing. So we get a recap on the inside cover of what happened and who everybody is, all their superhero names and whatnot. And we open with Elizabeth Two Youngman, also known as Talisman of Alpha Flight, looking for Rachel. And as she's wandering around, she ends up in a cavern system where she finds a sketchbook. And it's the sketchbook we saw one of the passengers drawing in at the beginning of the previous first issue. She flips through it, and we see the art is getting progressively worse and worse. But we don't think much of it, doesn't make it a big deal. Kitty Pryde shows up, and they continue on their way and end up in a preserved Norse village. And they find a dedication runestone, which will be important later. But in the meantime, Loki, who had gone with Kitty Pryde, nudges Kitty and leads them to Rachel, who is incredibly upset. Before they can get too far, the rocks start coming down on the cavern, so they have to blast their way out, and they end up at the Fire Mountain pillar of energy that we saw in the first issue. And they manage to barely escape. It's pretty tenuous. There's some real danger there. Rachel's almost crushed by some rocks. Kitty Pryde has to hold her breath to phase through a big tunnel. Accidentally, Talisman touches the Fire Mountain pillar and gets zapped, and it blinks out for a second, but they're not affected beyond almost being crushed to death. They had a brief moment of superpowers where they were nearly invulnerable, and that's what saves them. Then the Fire Mountain pillar comes back on, but the sketchbook is forgotten about and left on the floor as they run back to tell the others what's going on. And they know something's up, because that was obviously not natural. Well, we get a lot of boring stuff. Wolverine is sleeping on a bed, and Madeline Pryor, Scott Summers' second wife, Jean Grey, is dead at this point after the Phoenix Saga. She pulls the crazy out of Wolverine while he's sleeping, so he doesn't have the berserker rages anymore. Wolverine comes to realize that when he was out looking for Snowbird, he doesn't remember coming back to the building. Something's up, so he tracks his own scent and finds that it was the same location where Shaman's medicine pouch was thrown. And he pokes around and finds Snowbird in a cave, really messed up looking. And that's when a couple of people show up. There's Beastmaster and a couple other... Who's the other guy? Beastmaster and Pathfinder show up with a bunch of animals, and they threaten Wolverine. Lockheed went along with Wolverine. He's like, well, you're going to have to go through me to get to her, because I'm not leaving Snowbird to die with you. And then we go back to our heroes, who are a little worried about their friends, and Shaman is still partly conscious. Talisman takes the rune to the library and looks it up, and we learn that it's a dedication to Loki, which is very rare. But they don't find anything else out. You start suspecting there's more afoot. Then we see Loki watching them. He's getting annoyed. Come on, just take it. Wolverine shows up, dragging Snowbird on a stretcher, and he's got a real beat-up Beastmaster. And he tells them that, yeah, Pathfinder's with the angels now. Sorry. But Snowbird's awful and in terrible shape. And they figure out that the whatever is going on is affecting magic users. So it's pretty obvious that this Fire Mountain is magical, and it's having a murderous effect on the magic users in the group. So they don't like that. Wolverine tells them, you tried to kill Snowbird, you're trying to kill Shaman, I don't care for it, we're gonna have words. And he says, there's a small price to pay for these powers, and unfortunately that's just the way it is. Well, the teams get divided by this, saying, half the group thinking this is a benefit to humanity, and the other half saying, no, this is not a gift if innocent people are going to die. And they think that this can cure all the world's ills, but that the other half of the group says, no, it won't. It'll just make more resentment, and of course it devolves into a massive fight. And there's a lot of X-Men and Alpha Flight have basically split into different groups. Some of the Alpha Flight are saying no, some are saying yes, same with the X-Men. Talisman and North Star head out to the Fire Mountain to try and do something. She's considering sacrificing herself. And one of the artist guy, Dominic, he comes out to stop them with Aurora. And Aurora finds the sketchbook, and the guy freaks out on her and throws it into the pit. Then it comes out that, of course, he can't draw anymore. His last drawings were like little stick animals, like a little kid would do, and he lost all of his natural talent as a consequence of taking this power. So he can only imitate things, he can't actually create. So all the furniture and all the constructs were only from memory, and looking at the book, he couldn't create new ones. And he's obviously very upset by that, and that changes things because you're losing any natural talent you had. Well, people start to kind of come around then, and that's when Loki shows up and calls them a bunch of ingrates because he just offered them something, and he tries to force it on them. And when they say no, he gets mad and says, "You're going to." And Scott Summers blasts him in the face, and a bunch of snow giants are summoned, and the X-Men and Alpha Flight have to fight those, while Loki lords over them that he's going to beat it into their head, basically. And he knocks one guy out, and a whole bunch of action happens. Madeline Pryor agrees to do what he wants. Loki said, "'Tis I am the victor here, Xavier." Somebody says, "Not so, Master of Mischief." And it's we who live above in shadow come out. As they say here, "We are to Asgard as its immortal sons and daughters are to the realm of men. We have witnessed and judged and found thee wanting." And they deny his petition for whatever item is he's trying to get his hands on. And he threatens to kill all the humans, and they're like, "You will do no such thing." And they make him swear, and he's a man of his word, but he warns them that although he won't hurt them now, somewhere down the line he's going to find a way to get even. And everybody reverts back to their form. Snow starts falling, the fire mountain disappears, and the building starts to slowly crumble away. Snowbird and Shaman are restored, and they all have to hurry up and get in the plane to get out of there. But Rachel's not there, and Cyclops goes out looking for her, finds her, and takes her back to the plane. They have like some bonding time there. And Rachel's kind of accepted that Madeline Pryor's child will be a boy, and she's the daughter of Jean Grey from an alternate timeline. So overall, though, I really like the cover. I think it's really cool, very dynamic. The storyline is really good, really well written, especially for its time. Some of the costumes are a little 80s looking. It was a fun read. It's very story driven, not nearly as much action driven. So if you're expecting a real action beat 'em up, it's not really that. It's a much more story oriented thing, and it's definitely an all ages book. I think a lot of kids probably won't like it, but teenagers probably dig it. They'll probably think it's okay, but it's a really good book with a really good story, and it would have made a good movie, but it's definitely not an action-driven story. So if you're looking for an action story with the X-Men, this is not it. It's a Claremont soap opera type story that would have made a great TV episode, like a two-parter. It's definitely worth checking out if you're a diehard X-Men fan, especially because it is a Claremont issue, and it is really fun read, and it doesn't take as long as a lot of books would that have that much dialogue. It's very well paced, so definitely if you get a chance, check it out. I thought it was really good. It's just not an action story. You don't think it is going in, but it is definitely a really good story about having to make moral decisions and looking at both sides of a situation. But that'll do it for this one. As always, thanks for listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode.